Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode 2 in the How to Become a Craft Fair Organizer series. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to start and build your email contact list and all the benefits that are going to come with maintaining and growing that list over time. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so as I just mentioned, this is episode 2 of 20, so we're very early on in the series. The reason why I want to tell you about this particular topic this early is because it's crucial for you to start building your email contact lists and to keep them organized from day one. It's basically just going to give you a really nice head start on communicating and being able to recruit vendors, being able to attract visitors to your events, the more that you focus on building up this contact list early on in your process. So let's go ahead with our first tip. All right, so based on the first episode in the Becoming an Organizer series, you should already have an email address that's affiliated with your business. So in that email, you should have some area where you can start to build up contacts that are affiliated with that email account. Now, I would recommend that you start building out 2 main email contact lists. You want to have a whole separate group for vendors and potential vendors and vendors that you've worked with before. And then you want to have another list for visitors and shoppers and just people who are enthusiastic and excited for your events to attend as a shopper. You want to get these organized from the start and have these 2 separate lists from the very beginning. It's so much easier to build up contacts when you already have these 2 subfolders created for your contacts and you're organized from the very beginning. When you send out mass emails, and once you get to that point where you start sending out bulk emails that are geared towards like all vendors or all visitors, you're going to be glad that you've done this from the very start, because if you just throw all of your contacts into your contact folder and you don't label them vendors or visitors or you don't give them a specific label, then it's going to be much more difficult to send these mass emails out to big groups of people who might benefit from one mass email. So now that we're thinking about these 2 different groups and these 2 different contact lists that we're building out, let's start to think about what type of information is best to collect as you build out each contact card. So for the vendors, you're going to want their name, their business name, the category of crafts that they create. Okay, so this is something that we're going to talk about later on in the series, but to give you a little bit of a sneak peek, you want to basically have categories of arts and crafts already in mind so that when you map out your layouts, you can think about the different types of vendors that you want to attract at your show. So for example, woodworkers or jewelry makers, the fabric people who make clothing, all the different types of arts and crafts. So the category of crafts is something that you want to have on the contact card if possible, because again, that's only going to help you out further in the future. You'll also probably want to try to get their home address so that if you need to send any materials back and forth with your vendors, that's going to make that easier if you already have that on your contact card. Be sure to try to keep this up to date. Obviously, people move around, and maybe you can do this at events where you have some sort of handout or something that goes around just to make sure that people's addresses are up to date and things like that. So just something to kind of consider. Another thing to have on their contact card is their phone number. And then, of course, obviously, the most important one is their email address. Try to get a business email address if they have multiple, like if they have a personal email account and then they have an account related to their craft fair business. That's obviously the one that you're going to want to try to get for your contact card. All right, so now when we start talking about the visitors or the shoppers at your events, you obviously don't need to go that detailed like we did with your vendors. So you want to get their name. You obviously need to get their email address. And then one other thing that I would recommend is to try to get the city that they live in, because this can help you with area demographics of where your fans are located. So as you start to develop more of a following in a certain area, maybe that'll help you plan out where you should be hosting your events. So with all that in mind, now you need to actually go about building your email contact list. So how do you do that? Where do you get this information and these opportunities from? So the easiest place to start is with your family, your friends, and your coworkers. Reach out to them and let them know that you're going to start organizing craft fairs and gauge their interest level. But one thing that you should try to avoid is to pressure anyone into supporting you. You should try to learn to be okay without support from people who are close to you, because you'll get some from some people, and then some people might not take any interest or anything like that. And just remember that this is your journey. This is your passion project and all that. And nobody is really obligated to support you, so don't get hung up on things like that. Just kind of be grateful for the people who are in your corner and do support you. And like I said, start with your friends, your family, your coworkers, and that can be an easy way to start to build up a little bit of some immediate contacts to kind of get that email contact list built up and get it off the ground. Now, your next easiest way is to utilize social media. So obviously, like I said in the previous episode, you should have some sort of presence on social media started. And this is where you're going to want to log in under your business account, your branded account, whatever you want to call it, and start to make some posts in different groups that are related to this topic. So Facebook groups, for example, are a good place to start. I would join some craft fair groups, especially ones that are based in your general region. Doesn't necessarily have to be in areas that you plan to host a craft fair in. So let's just say, for example, like a big city like Chicago or New York or LA. Like, you don't have to particularly join those specific things. I would kind of branch out and do general areas around those areas as well, because you don't know where the vendors are coming from who are interested in those areas. Okay, so that's important that you want to cast a little bit of a wider net than you think that you might need, because you might attract some people who you might not have had the opportunity to connect with because you were keeping things too centralized and too localized to your area. So like I said, cast a little bit of a wide net, and you never know, you might connect with some people who will travel to you. But like I said, go ahead and start making some posts in these groups, introduce yourself, and network with potential vendors, even potential visitors of shows. And this can give you a nice head start on building up your presence and following online, and also getting those email contacts. Now, once you start designing your vendor applications, and I'll show you how to do this in a future episode, but you'll want to make sure that you're including some sort of email communications opt-in on your vendor applications. This means that any vendor who applies to your show would agree to have email communications sent from you. So this is a fantastic way to start building up contacts for vendors. And this is something that is a pretty common practice on vendor applications now. Obviously, once you start booking vendors for a show, you need to communicate with them. They need to know the details of the day of the event and things like that. So they kind of expect this already. So don't feel weird about putting this type of language on a vendor application, because, vendors are going to expect this anyways. But by putting an opt-in on there, that's giving you essentially a green light to reach out to them in the future when you announce different shows and things like that. So this is kind of a nice basically expectation that vendors go in knowing that they're about to experience, and it's a great opportunity to take advantage of as an organizer to start building up that email contact list. So once the day of the event comes, you should always have some sort of information table or information kiosk that not only has all of your business cards out, which should have your information on it, of course, but you should have some sort of email sign-up sheet, and that gives visitors the opportunity to stay in the know with all of your events. On the top, you always want to put some sort of disclosure or disclaimer that says, by putting your email address down here, by submitting your email, you're opting in for future communications regarding craft fairs or monthly newsletter, whatever you plan on using it for. But basically just put your intention on the sheet so that they know where their email address is going and the purpose that you're collecting it for. So that's called a disclosure, and something that you want to put on an email contact card. So some people will have a sheet where you, like a lot of people can write their email address on there. Some people will have little bits of paper that can be folded up and put into a box so that it's a little bit more private and all email addresses aren't just openly exposed. That's a method that I would recommend that, we used for many years. And I think it just makes visitors feel a little bit more comfortable about putting their email addresses out there and giving it to you because, like I said, everybody's eyes aren't on it. So we had a little bit of luck with that throughout the years. And after every show, we would open up the box and there'd be, a handful of emails in there that we could add to our contact list. So again, another fairly easy way to start building up that contact list, at least on the visitor side. And then finally, another thing that you can do, especially on the visitor side, is if you have an admission booth or an attendance booth or some sort of like check-in area or welcome area when people are walking in, consider giving handout to event visitors. Now, I know that this is going to require a little bit of time and effort and a little bit of cost up front to create these, but it can go a long way in gaining a following and kind of gaining some traction at your events. And this leaves a little bit more of a professional look on vendors as well, because it shows that you're putting in serious effort in trying to attract visitors to your show. You're, utilizing many different outlets to try to keep attendance strong at your event. So not only hopefully are you able to gain contacts from visitors, but hopefully the vendors see this and they appreciate the effort that you're putting in to attract a strong crowd at your shows. So with all that being said, one thing that I kind of unfortunately should say is that never under any circumstances should you misuse people's contact info or mislead them on how their info will be used. Okay, so you never want to hoard a bunch of visitor contacts or vendor contacts and then redistribute them to somebody else or something like that. We actually had a situation at one point where we were no longer going to host a particular event at a venue. And there was really no like specific issues. We had actually kind of just like outgrown the facility. Like we wanted more booths, we wanted more space and things like that. So we were kind of altering locations in the same city. And the facility manager at the time reached out to us and they actually tried to see if we would be interested in like essentially selling our contact list to them so that they could continue hosting an art and craft fair at this particular venue. So there's going to be probably some random things, random instances that come along like this, where the door is opened for really weird things to occur with people's contact information. Don't ever just go down those roads because you wouldn't want that happening to you, right? I mean, you wouldn't want something happening completely behind the scenes that you're unaware of with your contact information that's exchanging hands and going from person to person that you're unaware of. So just avoid those situations. They might come up and do your best to navigate them professionally and always decline any kind of misuse of people's contact information. And now let's talk about some great ways to utilize your contacts. So as you start to build up your email contact list, there's various ways that you can use them. So one is to have a mass email for a new show announcement trying to acquire vendors. So if you have a whole list of vendors that you're interested in working with or you already have worked with and you're about to announce a new show, well then this is a fantastic opportunity to get a head start on booking for that event, acquiring all those vendors that you'd love to have at your show. On the flip side, another way to use your contacts is a mass email for a new show, but seeking visitors. Okay, so sending an email out to all the potential shoppers who might be interested in your event. Now, you can probably do this maybe up to 2, maybe 3 times per event. One I would do very early. So Basically, as soon as you have a general idea of what the show is going to look like, okay, so you already know the date, so you have the date picked out, you have the venue picked out, and you know about how many vendors are going to be participating and whether or not you're going to have different elements. So, are you going to have live music, food trucks, entertainment, that sort of thing? Once you have a general idea of what the event is going to look like, then you can send out some sort of an announcement email, just again, announcing the show. And this might stir up some interest. Maybe if you have like ticket sales, so say it's like a paid admission, then you can start to maybe get some early ticket sales. Now, if you announce this really far in advance, just be prepared for people who aren't going to care at first, okay? Because generally people aren't going to put something on their calendar for like 8 months out, right? So you might get a little bit of action on the visitor side with ticket sales or things like that, but do an initial announcement, and then I would strongly recommend doing another one that's maybe like 2 to 3 weeks out. I think 3 weeks is kind of like a nice sweet spot where it gives people enough time to plan for it so they can prepare and maybe gather some friends and family to go to your event. But then it's also not like tomorrow, and it's not so far in advance that they're just going to forget about it. So I think 2 to 3 weeks is kind of that sweet spot for at least that second email if you're going to send a big one. Now, another email that you can send out that can actually go to both your vendors and visitors, or potentially just your entire contact list, is either like a monthly or quarterly newsletter. And that can include your show schedule, some random crafting tips. That's always kind of cool. A comment box is always nice because it gives people a way to connect with you and give you suggestions on how to improve your show. And trust me, you should always be open to feedback because that's going to help you improve greatly. So these are just some different ideas on how you can utilize those contact lists. So in closing, what I'd like to say about this topic is that building your contact list is going to be incredibly important, not only in establishing your success early on, but also maintaining growth and success of your events in the future. Basically, once you start to get the ball rolling and you host like your first event or two, the snowball is just rolling down the hill, right? And you want it to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So remember to keep your contacts up to date and organized because, again, like I said, people move, people establish different businesses, maybe they change their business name. You always want to just make sure your contacts are up to date. And this is going to help you to make the most of your networking opportunities, both with vendors and visitors. Thank you so much for watching episode 2 in the How to Become a Craft Fair Organizer series. To check out all the other videos in the playlist, click on this playlist above. I keep doing this side. It's going to be over here. Click on the playlist above over here. And thank you all so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing.